On today's episode, we have Dr. Ben Rosenblatt. Ben famously led physical performance for the England men's football team. He has coached athletes to compete and medal at every Olympics since 2004. Ben was a key member of the GB hockey coaching team that won that famous gold out in Rio. Ben's also the founder of 292 Performance, a team of high-performing coaches that provide individual support to high-performing athletes across the Premier League and multiple other sports. He has a PhD and a research interest in maximising training efficiency and effectiveness, and has consulted with sports teams all over the planet. In this episode, we're going to discuss how we design great practice that maximizes development trajectory. We're going to talk about lots of coaching techniques you can apply. And of course, we're going to discuss the characteristics of some of the world's most elite athletes that Ben's worked with. I hope you enjoy. Dr. Ben Rosenblatt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much for having me, James.
Mate, I've been buzzing to get you on this and really looking forward to speaking all things human performance today. Can you kick off, mate, with giving us a bit of an insight into where it all began for you?
100%. But before I do that, I just want to say a massive thank you for having me on. And I'm an avid listener of the podcast. And so you've got the most incredible people and ask them really, really searching questions. So with all the ones that I've done, this is the one I'm sort of most anxious about because of just the quality the quality that of people that you bring in, the questions that you ask. So thank you very much for hosting this podcast and bringing those people to everybody as well.
Mate, thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you. And yeah, I've got zero doubt you're going to add a ton of value today.
100%. Let's go. So it started for me with so when I was thinking about this, it was more like, when did I first realised I could have a career, or wanted to have a career around high performance sport? So I played football, and my kind of, my ambitions, my dream was all about playing professional football. I managed to get a contract that I played. I played in the academies at like Arsenal and Chelsea, and I think I played for every single non-league club around North London, and got a contract at Barnet, and then it kind of fizzled out for me there. I got injured, and then I think honestly mentally as well, I don't think that I was I couldn't handle setbacks and things like that, and that really affected. I was a bit of a perfectionist, and it had a really bad negative impact on my game. So while I was doing that, I actually became a a lifeguard and a personal trainer to try and a little bit of cash. And it was at that period of time I became really interested in my own physical preparation. I was a goalkeeper. I wanted to become really powerful and really explosive. So I grew up next to the North Circular in North London, for the international listeners, which is sort of like a kind of main road. And there was a really steep staircase. So I do like plyometrics up the staircases every night and have this searing DOMs and muscle soreness for days on end.
Beautiful.
And wondering why I was performing like shit at the weekend. So I became really interested in like how to become a beast physically, and made a ton of errors there. And I guess I became interested in coaching around that moment as well there, because I had clients and they had different needs and ambitions. The first client I had weighed over 30 stones. He was really, really big. When I tried to put the blood pressure monitor on him, it wouldn't fit around his arm. He was too heavy for the scales. So it would kind of try to understand those type of people, or those different type of people to me who were, trying to become a high level athlete. And I suppose that's where my kind of coaching journey grew. When I also competed in a lot of martial arts and combat sport, and again, that laid a bit of a legacy in my head around, from a coaching perspective, is kind of what training should be like. So one of the biggest challenges I've had as a coach is to try and kind of marry the difference between my values, my personal expectations of myself and people around me, and then the reality of who other people are and their values as well. And it's the thing I find most intriguing about coaching.
That's fantastic insight, Ben. And then, so in terms of this sort of early experience that sparked this interest, you obviously then took the steps to enter into academia to delve deeper. Like, how was that experience for you?
Well, it was fascinating, really. So I probably entered like a year or two later because I was working. I told you what I did do. I set up the UK's first spinning studio, which was
Oh, nice.
called Pure Spin, which was based down in London.
So you're to
Um,
blame for that.
well, not really. It lasted for about 5 minutes, and I was living in Cardiff at the time, so I had to drive back to come get the take-ins, and then drive all the way back. I mean, it didn't cover my petrol money; it was ridiculous. But I guess. So I was thinking about that. So what did you ask? Sorry, James. What was?
No, I was going to say, actually, that's really interesting having got to know you recently, though. That links to your entrepreneurial streak that's clearly there, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah, I was intrigued to understand you had that interest that was ignited, and then that, I guess, prompted you to pursue academic study.
Yeah, well, I was playing football, and I was earning some money from playing football. I was earning a bit of cash as a kind of boxing sparring partner as well, and I was a personal trainer. And I thought, well, actually, people around me, I had some real fun with a lot of like people who are quite a bit older than me, and I was having a great old time of it. And I thought, well, but then I kind of looked ahead for the next few years and thought, well, is this really the direction I want to be going? Sort of playing football and jogging people around the block. And what I was really interested in is working in elite sport and coaching. You know, my ambition was to be a fitness coach in the Premier League. And you know, I kind of looked at that and I thought, well, that is absolutely what I want to be doing. So I studied, took myself off to university, and I have to admit, when I went to university, I was really, really disappointed because everyone else around me was, you know, they just wanted to get pissed, have fun, and not study. Where I'd kind of given up something to go and study to become better at my craft. So
Absolutely.
that was, I guess, I was quite young when I took that, when I kind of had that mindset, really. But I found it really, really frustrating. But it also meant was that there was no strength and conditioning coaches at the university that I was at. So except for one who coached the rugby team. So there was tennis players there, track and field athletes there, footballers, swimmers. Everyone was really interested, and the level of sport they were playing was quite high, like national to sort of sub-international standard. So what it meant was I had exposure to coaching a lot of athletes at a very, very kind of early stage in my career, and building up a portfolio of experiences that I was able to kind of lean on and leverage on as well. So although the academic side of things I was frustrated by and didn't find challenging, what it meant was I had this huge kind of coaching opportunity. And then came the opportunity to come to America. I thought it was like the kind of worst deal in the world, or the best deal in the world, depending how you frame it. But I was walking, there was a notice board, and it said like a transfer and exchange program to Cal State Long Beach in America.
Oh,
and
sounds
so
awful.
Well, 4 students from University of Wales Institute Cardiff, we were like on a hill in South Wales where the rain was coming in horizontal. And it was like, okay, you 4 can go over to California for 6 months, and there's 4 people from California going to come and take your life. I was like,
yeah,
you're kidding. So off I went over there, and then again got great opportunity to. I thought the kind of level of academic kind of study and interest was higher over in America. I studied, you know, the strength and conditioning, studied some real detailed biomechanics, which I went to my PhD on, and an amazing course, which was a psychology of coaching, which helped me, I guess, understand the experiences that I was having as a coach, and then how to kind of craft better experiences for the athletes I was working with. That was just amazing. We had, I was also able to, again, carry on coaching. There was a men's, women's volleyball, men's, women's basketball, baseball, softball, track and field, soccer, like all these programs there. And I was just in the weight room from morning till night, and then still boxing, still playing football myself, and still having a jolly good time of it as well.
That's amazing, mate. I think there's something so special there, that particularly if there are any students listening to this, because I feel like I benefit from a similar setup in terms of, whilst you're studying from an academic perspective, you've got that theory element, but when you've got that ability to concurrently, well, number one, put the theory to practice, but to also do the job, you just synergize in terms of learning. And not only do you have, say, 3-4 years of academic study behind you, you also have that 3 to 4 years of coaching, which is such an edge. It's something
Also,
clearly...
sorry, Cam.
No, I was gonna say it's something that you clearly really leveraged. And that must have come from this deep interest, not just in human performance, but in particularly coaching. And as you've touched on there, that course, the psychology of coaching. I know that's something we talk about a lot. But yeah, it sounds like that interest sort of, again, I always sort of talk about you don't get to pick your interest, they pick you. And it sounds like the coaching piece is something that's a part of you, and you've sort of voluntarily gone out and sought opportunities to compete at that, as well as obviously your interest in sport itself.
Not 100%. It became really. I think when you start coaching, you immediately feel this massive sense of, well, I do anyway, but this massive sense of responsibility. And maybe it started because of, being a personal trainer, where people are paying you money and they're expecting an outcome or a result from it. And I felt this huge amount of responsibility for that, which was, when people investing their time in you've got to get it right. And then part of that is helping you. So you got to get your programming right. You got to make sure that you understand the person really, really well. Make sure you understand the context, their environment. You've got to invest because they've put a hell of a lot of trust and faith in you. So in my mind, you have to repay that by investing in them and the experience they're having as well.
I think that's a brilliant attitude to bring to the table. And in terms of, if I could just zero back real quick to that transition from, and you can maybe give us a top superficial overview just because it's interesting, but like, right, you're coaching at a university in Wales, you go to the US, not just the US, I guess California, but like, what were the big differences in terms of attitude, culture, mindset?
Yeah, well, mate,
infrastructure even.
I mean, for me, that it was just, like when I went to America, I finally felt like there was a load of people like were a bit like me, who were just like, I was like, I've got this idea to do that, and they're like, right, go on, meet this person, speak with them, try it, do it. Or I'd say,
they're brilliant for that, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%. I was like, there was a course I wanted to, that was going on. I was like, look, it was a master's course. So I spoke to the guy who ran it, and I think in England or the UK, where the university I was at the time, I was like, if I would have gone, do you mind if I sit in the back and listen to these lectures? They would have gone, no, you haven't signed up for it. And they were like, come on, come right in. I'm not going to try the accent, but it was like, it was come on. Thank you. So the attitude was just like, it felt like people like me were just energized, wanted to do stuff. It was, super positive and encouraging, and a kind of willingness to take risks and go for it. Whereas I felt when I was in the UK, and and still now, it's whenever you think, oh, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to do that, everyone's going to tell you 1,000 reasons why it's shit and it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like in the UK, you might need a little bit more grit and resilience to kind of give things a go, or amazing people around you to support you. Because in the UK, there'll be 1,000 people telling you every reason why you can't do something. Well, in the US, it felt like everyone was telling me, why haven't you done it already?
Yeah, brilliant. And then, so Ben, right? So you've gone over to the US. You're at the sort of master's level. You obviously decide to then take it to PhD. How was that as an experience?
So I didn't know what a PhD was. I didn't know what it was. It wasn't actually at master. I didn't do my masters. I finished my studies at undergrad, and I was a biomechanics. I did like a biomechanics dissertation, and my supervisor was a guy called Dr. or Professor Gareth Irwin, who's still a very, very close friend of mine now. And we were talking, and he was just like, well, I see all these track and field athletes doing loads of power cleans, but I've got no idea whether it transfers to sprinting or not. Everyone talks about how you triple extend through your hip, knee and ankle, you push really hard, and that's the thing that transfers to sprinting. But there's no evidence for that whatsoever. And I think it's actually flawed from, he was saying to me, I think it's actually flawed from the principles of motor learning and biomechanics, because we don't actually know. Is that something you'd be interested in looking at? So I did it for my undergraduate. I managed to publish some research from my undergraduate and present it at like kind of several conferences, and got a grant to go to present it in the US. And when I was there, I've met the most. I know you had Duncan French on actually. And that's what I met Duncan French at a conference over there for the first time, and it was a piece of research that was quite relevant at the time, and people were interested in it. So I had loads of like sort of big dogs in my world ask me loads of questions about something I knew very little about, but it gave me a platform to speak to them about lots of other things like training and coaching. So when I came back to the UK, obviously it was a bit of kind of noise around this bit of research, and Gareth said, "Would you like to do it as a PhD?" I said, "Yeah, but I've got a job. I'm going to work. I'm a coach first." So then, 8 years later, I was still just about finished it. So I did it kind of I did it at evenings and weekends when I was coaching full time as well.
And then, so when it comes to, I guess, going into full-time professional coaching, what was the first moment you realized, oh, okay, I'm good at this, and there's a chance I could do it at a relatively high level?
I think I've always been really fortunate by the people that have been around me. I think the mentors that I've had, or and or the coaches that I've had around me from a very, very early age, have always been people who've coached and worked at the very, very highest level. So part of that became sort of some of my expectations.
Okay, that's interesting.
So I never had any other expectation, and that's what I'm going to go and do as well, and that's what I'm going to aspire towards or work towards. My ambition was always to work in Premier League football, and then again, I really didn't know much about the kind of Olympic world until I started to work with athletes at UWIC, which was the university I was at, and then applying for jobs after university as well. I suppose that I felt like I was good at it quite early on because athletes that I was working with were getting really positive results by it. When I went to take my first full-time job as a rehab S&C coach at the Olympic Medical Institute, again, there was no one else who was, again, I think I've been really fortunate in my career. I've always sort of stepped into a place where there isn't many people doing that particular thing. So it has allowed me to build a bit of a niche or a bit of an expertise in an area that not many other people have got. So then people become really interested in kind of what you're doing. So again, that allows you to build a stronger network, a better community, and all that kind of and stuff like that. I think the actual challenge for me was I got fired from Birmingham City when we got promoted to the Premier League, and a player got injured during a sprint in the warm-up on transfer deadline day. And that actually was a reason for me where I actually questioned, am I good at this or not? Am I actually, because I felt like up until that point, I've been a very, very effective coach. We'd had really great results. At very, very young age, coached athletes to compete at Beijing Olympics, Athens Olympics, even earlier, Commonwealth Games in 2006. And I'd worked with coaches and athletes to prepare them for that. So I felt like I was good. And then very, very early on, I became head of sports science at Birmingham City when I was 23, and immediately felt like I wasn't very good at all. And all the things that had worked up until that point stopped working like almost immediately. So I think actually that the thing that was probably more useful for me was when things started to go really wrong, because then it started to make me question, am I good at this? How do I become effective in a different environment? How do I make myself better?
Yeah, very interesting. And in terms of that, I guess, failure you just described, and things working to that point, you got promoted that year, right? You came in, They got promoted. That was one isolated incident. From my perspective, I'm instantly thinking some outcome bias, some randomness probably there with the nature of injuries. But could you just describe to us the culture within football in that respect? Because it's a challenging one, right? There's so many pressures on all the different stakeholders within, from the ownership to the manager to the players themselves. How was that, I guess, compared to working in the, I guess, Commonwealth sports or Olympic sports?
Well, I'll tell you what it was like then. I mean, we could spend a whole day talking about the culture of football, right? and I think you've highlighted a couple of bits. Some of the kind of initial conditions are really, really different, and some of the historical conditions is really different. I consider myself very, very fortunate because I've worked across a whole host of different sports. Like we've spoken earlier, like I named 9 or 10 sports I'd worked with within the first year or two of coaching, and each sport is really different. I remember when I worked at the intensive rehab unit at Bisham Abbey, we'd have lots of different sports coming in. Every single coach would come in and say, what you don't understand about this sport is that their bodies are different. They respond and adapt differently to, and literally every single coach would say it. And you kind of think two things. One, oh, that's bollocks, because everyone's got a fucking body, right?
Yeah.
Or you think, okay, well, what is it? What are the uniquenesses about it? So some of the observations that I made was that one of the things that I was trying to do was promote a strength training culture within the sport in a time when it really was very, very new. So I'd come in from Olympic sports where, as a strength and conditioning coach, where strength and actually I had previous experiences working in football. Obviously, played myself to a low level. Worked with Cardiff City and Millwall, where I was actually brought in to teach the players how to lift. So when I came into Birmingham City, I was like, right, this is my program now, and then what I'm going to do is teach everyone how to lift really heavy, get really strong. And of course, what happened was in the first couple of days, everyone gets like, well, the first warm up I did a 10 meters of walking lunges, and the next day 6 players had grade 1 adductor strains. And so then it was a complete different, okay, these guys really haven't done any of the most fundamental aspects of athletic preparation, which are going to help them become more resilient and help them become more athletic and achieve the ambitions that we have as a team, which was to get promoted. There was also at that point I realized that I had an opportunity to fuck things up a lot more than I had to make a positive impact. So I had to be really cautious about that. And then, of course, the other side of it is that these guys are competing twice a week in front of thousands, if not millions of people. And the consequences for them not being ready for a game are really, really high. Whereas in the Olympic world, that happens twice a year max. And certainly, on the really, really big stage every 4 years. So for me, those are the really, really big differences. And therefore, I think it's just, kind of human nature. If you haven't done something and you're asking to do something different and they're going to get judged on their outcome in a couple of days' time, you got to be sure as shit you're doing something right or things are going to go wrong for you,
Absolutely. And Ben, like am I correct in saying you've worked almost, I think it must be almost every Olympic cycle since 2008 in some way or another, haven't you? Yeah. And obviously you've experienced some significant success, gold medal success with the teams you've worked with as a coach and leader in that respect. Could you perhaps talk us through that experience?
What with Rio?
Rio would be a great one with the hockey. I know you've done extensive work with the hockey team.
Yeah.
And I guess you've seen that transition, right? You've seen that team transition from, aspirational contenders to world number one.
For me, the thing that was most attractive about that job was the fact that, and I think this is maybe, I know that the people who listen to this really, really in this podcast are really, really interested in leadership. So I'm trying to frame some of the answers around, around leadership. The thing that became really interesting about the job was that they had a trajectory of progression. They, went from not qualifying for Olympics to changing the program and going full time, which meant people had to quit their jobs and heavy investment, all that kind of, significant life changes to go through. To becoming 8th in the world, to becoming bronze at London 2012, and the challenge was, as we all know, that you kind of success kind of goes like that until you start going from bronze to gold, and then I listened to this. So basically, it's an exponential curve, right? You only don't have to do that much to make significant progress when you're trying to improve, but to try from going from contenders to winners, you have to rip the rule book up and go again.
Mhm.
And the changes, again, the change is exponential. And again, to sustain that and to go from gold to gold to gold to win to win to win is even harder. So the thing that became really attractive about that role for me was the fact that they were already like a successful team. They had a great culture, fantastic values, wonderful people, exceptional coaches that had already worked in there. And it was like, okay, how do you make that team better? This is really hard. So that's what made me take that role on. I guess within it as well, that was what the power of that team. They had worked with a fantastic psychologist called Andrea First and a great head coach called Danny Kerry, and a battle-hardened leadership group who had been through multiple cycles, had experienced failure and success, and knew what the real difference was. And then you had those kind of three leaders of Danny, Andrea, and that leadership group, and I guess myself as well, having this brilliant amount of tension between what we all thought was the right thing to do to take the team in the direction that we wanted to. And I think it was those types of discussions that enabled us to be successful. I think, to be more specific, we invested a lot of work trying to identify what our vision was as a team. We invested a lot of time into identifying what our shared values were, and then identifying what behaviours we wanted to see in a day-to-day training environment. And then we, like that whole piece, which I know you're already strong on, is representative design. We then, everything that we, as a coach, it becomes, or as a leader, I think one of the most challenging things to do is to pull people up on some of their behaviours when you think they're malaligned with the direction of travel, or with what we. But when you've got really clear expectations of people initially, and you go, okay, well, this is what we said we were going to do, and this is what I've observed, or this is what I've seen, this is what I've heard, and then this is how that relates to what we're trying to improve. Those challenging conversations about to essentially how to get people acting the right way, doing the right things, becomes a hell of a lot easier. So I think that was absolutely massive. And then we created this whole environment around the behaviours that we wanted to see, that we felt were orientated to around the ambitions that we had.
Ben, I think that's really, really like incredibly important insight, actually. And I think that hockey team and that journey they went on is probably, again, it should almost be a case study in how to do that well, in terms of a tangible, the application of what we know about achieving, creating a vision and celebrating winning behaviors and reinforcing them. But would you maybe be able to talk through some tangible examples of some of the behaviors that you perhaps identified, how they related to the vision you identified, and an example of how, as a coaching and leadership team, you're reinforcing them on a day-to-day basis, a lot on a journey like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I can think of two. I'm going to think, like, try to go towards 2 or 3 examples. So one of them was the frequency with which we met the leadership team. So what I would do is, on a monthly basis, I would meet the leadership team and say, this is what I think the direction of traveling is from a physical preparation perspective. So this is what I felt, this is the direction I feel that we need to take over the next 4, 6, 8 weeks. These are the observations I've made of the group, and it's based on, here's where we're going to get to. This is the observations I made of where we are now. And then again, here is some feedback on some behaviors that I've seen over the last, training cycle. Therefore, this is what I think we should be doing. And they would come back to me and they would go, yes, 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 no, 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 no. And have you thought about X, Y, and Z? And then they'd come back to me and go, we've observed this with you. We need a little bit more, can you be clearer about this? Can you try and help the team explain this in a different way, or understand this in a different way? And they would give me really, really rich feedback on how to essentially communicate with them. And then we would have a plan. I would talk to them about how the best way to share that was with the rest of the group, and then how I would be feeding back to that group as well. And then, mate, that was a dream. It became really, really easy, right? Some of the other, another example of that would be some of our core values were around we are winners, we are one team, and oh, bloody hell, I've forgotten the final one. That's how strong and powerful it was. I always forget it. But nonetheless, I would then, when I was coming up with training drills or activities like running sessions, they would call it, I say, like, this is a winning session. This is a session that we are winners. Or this is a session around we are one team. The other one was we are alive, which is like everyone's clued in and switched on the whole time.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Again, we would come up with training sessions which are around like we are alive. So there would be a values-based theme for every single activity that I would, or session that I would lead with the team.
And so this is away from that empty statement that's just plastered on the wall to a tangible, actionable behavior.
Absolutely. So this is 100% that. So yeah, if it was like we are alive, or like if it was we are winners, it's really easy. Like we're going to be doing a load of races, right?
Like something competitive, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if it is we are one team, then there would have been drills or activities where you could only be successful if you're working as a team. And then if we are alive, then I would provoke different challenges, or I would leave things particularly ambiguous, for example, for them to go and problem solve as a group.
Right. So you really have to switch on and think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was just, I guess that was how I tried to make stuff live in the domain that I was completely in control of. And then we'd have really kind of deep discussions with the coaches about what that would mean for the rest of the kind of environment that we were creating and the training activities that we were doing on the pitch as well.
Amazing.
And I think that's something that's been at that point there that so I will take it back a step as well, actually, because we finished 11th out of 12 at the World Cup in 2013. And at the same time, or was it 2014? Sorry, 2014. And at the same time, I was working with some judo fighters that had some real success around that period of time. So the judo fighters were saying to me, this is the best I've ever felt. I feel physically incredible. And the hockey players were saying, we feel slow, we feel unfit, and we feel weak. Right. So I've got two groups of athletes that I'm working with who are telling me, giving me completely different feedback on. And I'm like, well, I'm the same coach. I'm taking the same approach. So so I then went to read about what helps players, what helps athletes or individuals stay motivated and commit to programs and commit to things. And I came across the research of Becky and Ryan, which I'm sure you'll know about.
Of course, yeah.
Autonomy, connectedness, and mastery. And I noticed with the program that I'd written for the hockey players that they had no autonomy. It wasn't the action, those activities they were doing weren't connected to the things that were important to them, the values piece. And they had no measure about mastery, whether they were getting better at it or not. So it was at that point there that I then started to design all the interactions and the programs that I was writing for the athletes around, like, have they got autonomy, have they got mastery, and is there connectedness? So then the next step, which was...
That's a fantastic checklist, by the way, for anyone designing any sort of training. If you want to maximize engagement in anyone you're leading, those three things, I think that's a brilliant little checklist to mention, just for people listening, like literally remember those three questions.
But then it became really, for me, that was a really important point, because then I started to plan the things that I'd never started to plan. So then I'd started to plan how I wanted to have these different types of interactions. I started to then plan across the course of an Olympiad or a season or a year, when I wanted to see them have more mastery, get better at something, when I wanted to make sure it was really, then they wanted to have more autonomy, when I wanted to make sure it was really clear to them that this was completely connected to their personal and their group-based ambitions. So then again, when it became to the values piece, I was already in that thinking mode of like, okay, we've got these really, really strong values. Like, when is it really important for them to feel like they're winners? When is it really important to feel, or noticing within the team, do you know what? There just isn't that much, like everyone's a little bit, they're tired, right? This is the time when we need to be alive. So how do we design that?
So
So I guess
sounds obvious to say. Sorry to interrupt there, but what I love about listening to this, Ben, and I know obviously you've done this at the most elite level, but I think it's so easy for coaches and managers in we use the word coach, of course, in sport, but really we talk about managers to an extent. If we're talking in the concept of business, but to almost go through the motions, right? I'm observing this behavior, and they sort of jump to conclusion. Oh, they're just not this enough, whether it's motivated, resilient. But I love the way that I think one of the many things you do well and top coaches do well, it's that curiosity around, I'm observing this. And there's that almost second level thinking going on about, why am I seeing that there? And you're almost continuously running these little experiments. It's always about that default position of agency. Like I can impact this. I'm responsible. I've got ownership over those behaviors I'm observing, even though they're not coming from me directly. And yeah, sorry to pivot there, but I just think it's such a key point to highlight. As a coach or a leader, you are responsible, and you have way more impact than you probably think in the emotions and the, psychologically, when we talk about concentration, attention, or some of the psychological firepower in terms of motivation, drive, attention, than you probably think by taking the approach you just talked us through there.
Mate, like massively. And I think that we can start to like plan and organize these things. Like if you work back from how how do we want the players to be feeling at the Olympic final, physically, emotionally, psychologically, across, but like how, not just what actions and behaviors do we want to be observing from them, tactical, technical, but how do we want them to be feeling? What do we want them to be thinking about? And I think, and have we asked them? That's the other bit in sport, which I think as a coach is really, really often missed.
Such a good point.
To pivot ever so slightly and to reinforce the point you made, I think one of the biggest gaps there is in coaching is a mismatch in expectations between, and I wonder how true this is in leadership within business as well, in mismatch in expectations between what a coach expects from an athlete and what the athlete is expecting from themselves. Or in management and leadership, a boss thinks is expected. So is an employee really, really clear about precisely what's being expected of them? And have they got the tools, the resources, the skills, and the ambition to actually go and do it? For me, it's similar. And that's as a leader, those are essentially coaching questions that I'm asking myself. And as a leader, those are the same questions I ask of people that I work with as well. And I think it's the biggest thing that gets missed in coaching. And I can think of live examples with athletes that I'm currently working with or have previously worked with as well, where the biggest problem there is the coach isn't being completely clear with them around what's being expected of them. And then there's a huge level of tension and frustration. Whereas if they just said, we think that you should be doing this in these scenarios and you're doing this, what support do you need to bridge that gap? That's a very, very different conversation.
Mate, bang on. And even just, can you repeat back and clarify that you understand what I want from you? It's almost the old marriage counseling technique, like, you've got to talk to me about, what the frustration is, whether it's performance related. And then the athlete is perhaps, okay, can you feedback what you perceive the frustration to be, seeing as the coach has just explained it? And just making sure you're clear on the issue, I think is so easy, and it's such a human thing to do. But to sort of say, well, I told you that. I'm like, well, communication isn't just about telling someone; it's about ensuring and verifying that they understand.
Massively. And I think that and as a coach or a leader, it's actually, I find it a very challenging thing to do. I don't find that easy to do, and I require a lot of evidence to be able to make a judgment like that on somebody. And then I'm always second guessing myself. So this is the sort of stuff that I take lots of notes on and I record, because I want to make sure that I haven't been the person that's gone holding somebody accountable for something that I didn't set a clear expectation of them with. And that's both as a coach and as a leader as well. So these are the things that I pay a lot of attention to. Again, because yeah, I can't. It's irresponsible of me to hold somebody accountable for things that I haven't had an expectation of them to do.
Yeah, I mean, I love that's one of the things I've sort of really admire about you and your approach, your professionalism in that respect, and that absolute ownership in terms of, it's your job to ensure that the individual has the capacity to meet the demands that are going to be imposed on them, whether that's technically, tactically, psychologically, physically.
Yeah. What skills are you missing to be able to go and do that? And again, that's part of your role as a coach, isn't just to ask this sort of Yoda-esque questions, but also provide some really hard skills that you can help them solve that, bridge that gap or solve that particular problem.
And then there's, of course, that follow-up point that you talked about earlier in terms of, and then put them under the conditions that enable them to access that part of them, that exists, but that perhaps wasn't activated previously. We're talking about some of the intention or the motivation or the drive. Because some of these things are perceptual as well, right? It's perceptions of your potential rather than, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I defer to you on that. And you and I, this is something that you and I discuss often, and it's something I'm enjoy learning from you as well. But I think that I think that there's a perceptual gap, the skill gap, and then also the kind of training gap as well. For me, I'm really interested in that and how this transfers into different domains and different expertise. My PhD was in transfer of frantically. Sorry, it was around frantically. It was fucking frantic, but it was around transfer of training. Fundamentally, it was around transfer of training. We looked at biomechanics and motor learning of different skills, but fundamentally, it was how are you going to ensure that the activities that you're doing improve or impact in the performance where it matters and where it counts as well. So it helps us look at what the sites of adaptations are and how do we overload those things or pull on the.
Is there a more important topic? Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's the first question was asked. When we were asked to assess a skill act program or a development program, it's like, if what you're doing in practice doesn't transfer to Saturday's big game, then to an extent you can argue it's a complete waste of time. Yeah, and I just think it's such an under talked about or resourced area.
I think what's fascinating as well is that I think there's a lot in football as well where you prepare, you do a lot of preparation, and then you obviously warm them up and you go. And then just the most nervous moment for me was always just before kickoff, because at that point you're completely out of control and you've got no fucking idea what's going to happen next. So you've done all this training, and I think training and training design is always a theory. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is what we've got at this particular point in time. Based on everything we know, I think this is what we should try and do. And then you roll the dice, really, and you see if things work or not.
So much uncertainty, isn't there? Especially in a sport like football. And maybe that's a beautiful segue for us to pivot to that area of your career.
I wonder how much that's true of different domains as well. But for me, that what you try and do is increase the probability of success, right? Which I know is something that you speak quite a lot about. And you increase the probability of success by having a much better understanding of how of the people around you, the demands that they're facing, and how training actually does transfer to performance, and what the sites of adaptation that are needed for this group at this particular point in time.
I think it's another really crucial point you've made there for any coaches, leaders, managers listening. And again, I think it's something else that hockey team, that Team GV 2016 team did exceptionally well. But it's that whole. You talked about that. Okay, then the whistle goes and you're sort of on the sidelines, right? It's on them. And this is where that word self-regulation comes in.
Yeah. I
think this is something that was done really well by that coaching and leadership team, whereby you're given the opportunities, that word autonomy in the three-point checklist we talked about is particularly crucial, because they develop those skills to perceive, make decisions, and adjust accordingly in the match. When you can't be there with them, you can't be on their shoulder to talk them through everything.
I think that the athlete experience is completely critical to this. And, you're a competitive athlete yourself. I have been one. And I think that having that level of knowing what it's like to be in that, I will never get the opportunity to experience what it's like to play in a World Cup final or an Olympic final or compete in at these arenas. So I don't know, and I'm never going to know. I'm also never going to get the opportunity to live in someone else's head who I'm trying to lead or coach. So what I've got to do is ask them. And I think often a problem we have in strength and conditioning or physical preparation or across the performance disciplines really is that we might be saying to an athlete, we think that you should be doing this, but we've never asked them what they think or feel, what experience they're actually having, what their experience of this type of training, this type of activity.
And why?
Yeah, exactly. The psychology is a big one. Like, what are the barriers for engagement in psychology within sport? It's the thing that everyone talks about, but no one invests in. So, like, what are the big barriers for that, and why? What are those experiences, and why are they not working for you? Because in my mind, any performance support we have should be orientated to solving that problem, not a nebulous problem that looks good on a spreadsheet or a kind of research article.
Sorry to interrupt the podcast, but before we dive deeper into the conversation, I want to express how grateful I am that you're voluntarily choosing to spend your time here with us. I also want to take a moment to ask for your support. I want to bring you the best podcast I can in terms of guests, engaging discussions, and thought-provoking conversations every week. And that's where you come in. By hitting that like button and subscribing to the podcast, you play a vital role. Simply put, when you hit that like button or subscribe, you enable the podcast to reach a much wider audience. And the wider the audience, the easier it is for guests within my network to convince their agents, management teams to free up their diary and come on the show. Thank you in advance for your likes and subscriptions. Now, let's get back to business. Yeah, and I think that's because the baseline in strength and conditioning particularly is really high compared to maybe psychology. But I think there's also that with some of these concepts we're talking about, because it goes on between your ears, but behind your eyes, you can't see it. The hamstring goes, so obvious, isn't it? And there's almost this immediate need, whereas like from a psychological perspective, the hamstring tear in the warm-up, you can hide a bit and you can shirk and just, I had a bad day. It's not as objective and in your face as a physical injury.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for me, the point though is always just trying to understand what the athlete experience is. If you're a leader, what the person that you're leading, their experience is. If you've got a high profile client or whatever that person is, like, what is it that's really, really important to them? What are their values? What drives them? What are they trying to achieve? And trying to align all your work towards that really. And
Absolutely.
then show a variety of skills that can help that.
Absolutely. And have that desire to understand rather than to just impose. They're the expert on them.
Yeah. And then, but what that doesn't mean though is that it's that same argument around like, well, they get all their fitness from football, so why bother doing any fitness work? Well, they don't, because every game's different and every match they play is going to be against a different opposition. The physical demands they're going to have imposed on them is really, really different. Or with psychology, they've either got it up there or they haven't. No, they've had a bunch of experiences which they've interpreted in a load of different ways. And this is what their perception of themselves is in these particular moments, this particular point in time. Why don't we speak to the athletes or the people that we're leading and kind of excavate what's valuable and important to them and orientate our work around that.
Beautifully put. Such a good point, Ben. I guess from there, your role at hockey, where there was so many learnings, such an incredible success story for you and that leadership team as well. But then you pivot into work. I mean, you talked earlier about how your initial ambition was, I'd love to work in Premier League football, and you probably hamstring tear away from that. But then you go beyond that. You go straight to probably the ultimate job for any Englishman working in your space. Could you talk us through that?
Well, I was, I've been so fortunate to be able to have all the roles that I've had, and that one in particular, there was a guy called Dave Redding. So again, like speaking about the career piece, is that and how fortunate I've been, that there's always been the roles I've always taken on have always been a time when a team, an organization is looking to do something different, whether it is the British Olympic Association wanted to change the way they rehabilitate athletes, whether it is the hockey team trying to go from Birmingham City trying to get promoted to the Premier League, hockey team bronze to gold. And with the English Football Association, there was a lot of us that were recruited at a period of time by a guy called Dave Redding, who is an exceptional leader in performance sport. And that was a period of time when they're like, look, the team has been underperforming for a long period of time. And we want to find out why, and we want to try and change the fortunes. So we're going to recruit people from outside, actively recruit people from outside of the game who've got diverse experiences that can support and help the team and the organisation at this particular point in time. So I was responsible for the physical preparation of the men's pathway and the senior men's team, from the under 15s up to the senior men's.
Yeah, an incredible role. And, you know, sort of jumping ahead, there's obviously some incredible success there with the England team. Some you know, progressed further than have historically, bar 66, in terms of multiple competitions. How was that experience for you as a performer in that respect? Was it something you enjoyed? Was it challenging? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, definitely. It was massively challenging. And I think that, so actually Dave Redding spoke to me, he presented at a conference years and years and years ago. And he said something which has always stuck with me. I was a very early career coach at that particular point in time. And he said that the athletes that you're coaching and you're preparing them for their game day, their competition day. And they go through a competition and preparation routine in order to perform at their best at that particular moment. Your competition or your game day isn't that moment. Your competition, your game day is the moments that you coach them and you interact with them. So how are you preparing for those moments, which are much more frequent, but have got really, really high stakes associated with them as well? And it's something that completely resonated with me throughout my entire career, which is before every single session, I've got a performance preparation routine which I follow. I ask myself the same questions before every single training session. I'm very, very deliberate about the experience I want the athlete to have and feel, and then how I'm going to pivot within it. And then I debrief in a certain way as well. So coming into a role, I've also always seeked out in all aspects of my life the most challenging and risky situations I could possibly put myself in for one reason. Who knows why that is? But for one reason or another. And so the challenge and the opportunity to coach this group, I felt like it was an enormous challenge. The stakes were very high. You're one fuck up away from losing your job, or from, you know, even worse, creating disruption to a team which has got an incredible level of scrutiny on it as well. And I think what that does is it pushes a lot of people into a very, very safe place and to be risk averse. Whereas my approach on that is, we're trying to do something big, we're trying to do something special here. We need to change things, and we need to do things. We need to do things differently. And I found myself fortunate enough that I've got a kind of routine that I follow before, during a session, or not during, because you have to be in the moment during it, and then afterwards, to help me learn very, very fast what's working and what isn't.
I love that. And Ben, in terms of that leadership team, obviously sort of working with sort of the likes of Gareth Southgate, Steve Holland, like what do you think was some of the conditions that leadership group created that were really powerful in terms of extracting the most from English talent in terms of getting to cup finals and semi-finals?
I think that the whole the broader leadership group, which included Gareth and Steve, but also a lot of other fantastic leaders as well, and Ashworth, Dave Redding, Bryce Kavanagh, you know, to name a few. I think one of the things that they did an amazing job of was, I guess it's a situation analysis, going like, what are the real barriers for progression and success here, and trying to understand what those things really are. And I think for that group at that particular point in time, and it's no, I mean, there's been a bloody play written about it, so there's no secrets. A lot of it was.
What's the name of the place? Sorry for people listening that might want to.
I can't remember actually. I don't know. Something about England.
We'll work it out and stick it in the.
Yeah. Something about England. This is England. Nah. Hello England. Dear England. It's called Dear England.
Dear England. That's it. Yeah.
The biggest barrier at that particular point in time was, how do we get the players, like the amount of scrutiny and pressure that was on them, that the shirt weighed heavy, to use a football cliche.
Sure.
And did they really did they really enjoy coming to camp? Was it a positive place to be? Did they feel supported? Did they feel like they could be themselves? Did they trust the media? Were they able to speak freely to them, or there was a distrust among them? So I think some of the fundamental conditions they looked at were around that. And part of it was around, are we physically prepared? But that probably wasn't the most important thing in that, you know, certainly early in the cycle. The most important thing was, you know, can we, from the leadership group, was, can we get this group all buying into a shared vision and committing to that? And that became them, the players, feeling comfortable enough in the environment and having enough fun and enjoyment and joy in that environment, and having a positive experience of England, which they kind of had up until that point.
And it feels like over that period of time, again, outside in, that it's sort of transitioned and it's been moving along this continuum of sort of a group of talented individuals to a team.
Yeah.
Would you say that's a sort of an accurate observation in terms of?
I think the other point on this as well, which is the point that maybe gets overlooked as well, is complete tactical clarity. So that point around what is expected of me, what are going to get judged on. And, you know, I think that, you know, it probably sells less books or, you know, less tickets to the play or anything, you know, plays and stuff like that. But I think for a performance team, it's, you know, the hard technical detail of what you're going to get judged on has to be in place as well. Like, have you complete clarity on what your role is, and are you confident that that's going to be effective in, you know, defeating your opponent? And then as a player, have you got some sort of level of say within that as well? And I think what was interesting observation with the players is, initially it was just tell us what to do, we'll do it. And it was almost, you know, sussing the coaching group out a little bit, and, you know, having to build success based on that. And then having, you know, as they become more confident and to have more trust that this is effective, the tactics and the roles and what's been expected of me is effective, feeling more confident to be able to contribute to it as well. So I would say that the players have got complete clarity in how they prepare for matches, and tactically what's going to be expected of them, and how they can go and defeat their opposition. And those things aren't always easy to deliver, but there's clarity on it, which is really important.
Crucial. And Ben, do you mind talking us through? I mean, something I wanted to ask you about was, I mean, I love following the journey of this as it was sort of unfolding, but, you know, the fixtures come out for Euros and you're looking at, assuming things go to plan, there could be this game against France, right? Semi-final. And we're sort of, or was it quarterfinal? Sorry.
World Cup quarterfinal, yeah.
World Cup quarterfinal, that was it, sorry. And so there's this potential World Cup quarterfinal with France, assuming things go to plan. And obviously your head just goes straight to Mbappe versus Walker. I mean, best right back in the planet versus best left winger on the planet. And obviously, I think it was shortly after the sort of, you know, you look at those fixtures, he suffered a horrendous injury, right?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
And again, outside in, I'm like, how the hell because he absolutely took him out the game. It was, you know, as a football fan, not as an expert in football, but it was just sort of, you just made this the best player on the planet. You just looked like he was distinctly average. And but how the hell did he go from there to that injury in that time frame to beating Kylian Mbappe in sprints in a quarterfinal World Cup?
I think that it's probably unfair for me to tell his story, but because that's his story to tell. But I'll tell you a couple of observations about him, and then the process that we as a team go through with all of the rehabs.
Sure.
Yeah, some of the kind of beliefs or approaches around that. I mean, he is an exceptional competitor. He is, you know, clearly very, very fast. He studies his opponents, and he makes his business to be a winner. And I think those are his kind of initial starting conditions, which means that, you know, when it's time to compete, you know, you got to be better than your best to have a good crack at him. The challenge is that clearly the way he plays is physically very, very demanding, and we're having to get him to that point with a lot of it that we're out of control of as well, because he was rehabilitating. The first part of his rehab was at Man City as well.
What was the injury specifically? Was it?
It was a groin injury.
Groin, that was it. Yeah.
So the way that so my career has been based around rehabilitation, and like that was a really, really high profile one. But I've also been in rehabs for the Olympic Games where we managed to turn around an ACL injury in 10 weeks for the Olympics, or an Achilles rupture in 14 weeks. So these are kind of,
it's incredible.
It kind of wasn't our first rodeo of things like this. And part of the challenge is trying to understand in these situations what's realistic and feasible, and almost trying to understand, like what does he need to be ready for? So we had a language within England, which is, you know, are you going to be available, or are you going to be ready? And what are you going to be ready for, or ready to do? And so part of that as a coach is speaking to the other coaches around you and going and being real clear with that whole piece around clarity with the player, with the head coach, and try to understand, okay, what is it specifically that this individual needs to be ready for? And then playing back what that might look like from a preparation and I guess from a data perspective as well. So going, look, this is where they are now. This is what they've accumulated at this particular point in time. This is what you've told me they need to be ready for. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Just done this with a very high profile cricket player in their knee rehabilitation, coming back to play in the India Test matches. And it's like, look, this is going to be a massive stretch to come back for this, but what exactly does it look like? What does it look like from a physical demand perspective, a psychological demand perspective? When do we need to be able to demonstrate this readiness? And what do they need to have in the tank to make sure they can absorb not just that particular moment, but it would be useless in the Carl example to prepare them to play against Mbappe in the quarterfinal and then him be out of the semi-final and the final. Yeah. So in these tournaments, you need to be ready kind of for everything. And then it's about using those hard technical skills that you've got to understand how do you bridge that gap and kind of what's realistic, and painting a very, very clear picture for the athlete about what that looks like. And then getting their say into it, because there's a ton of flex within this as well. So we need to achieve these landmarks at this particular point in time. We need to accumulate this type of volume, this type of work within this period of time. And we think it needs to look a bit like this. These are the outcomes. These are things that are the complete non-negotiables. And with these really super experienced athletes, you go around and go, okay, how are we going to achieve that? How do we make this? And they might turn around, often they'll turn around, well, you tell me. You go, okay, here's the plan. Tell me what you want to change about it. and often they'll commit, and then sometimes they'll have really, really clear perspectives on how they see them progressing through that as well.
I think it's a brilliant model, and it's well done because it was incredible to watch.
It's certainly wasn't me. There was a huge team around Kyle, around from Man City with England, from physical, medical, nutrition, like across the entire board. There was probably 30 people plus that contributed to that rehab. And there's one really important person in that as well.
Yeah, of course. And what did you enjoy most? What was maybe a peak experience for you working with England?
I've got three. One of them was beating Germany.
Oh, I was hoping it was going to be that. Yeah.
Beat Germany in the last 16 of the Euros at Wembley.
That was a good beating as well, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was I think a moment when the team realised that okay, we can really take this on as well. It was at the best I'd seen us. It was that moment where I saw us live up to our capability, and it looked quite comfortable.
Yeah.
And there was players within that game who stepped into a space that was kind of new for them as well. So that was really cool to watch. Actually the Russia World Cup, getting to the semi-final, and the FA flew our families out there. So seeing my wife and brother at the semi-final of the World Cup was just fucking bizarre, to be honest with you, and just a really amazing moment. But I think the thing that stands out most is it was actually in the Euros prep. The thing that I've been trying to change when I was at England was a physical training culture. So how players, interacted with physical training. My big mission was, can we get them to commit to some work to be done consistently, then make it more intense, then make it more specific and individualized to them over a 7-8 year period.
Love that.
That was my big mission. And also, can we make S&C coaches' lives easier for them back in the club environment, because you've got a bunch of players who are hungry, knowledgeable, and interested and want to train. So for me, it was like, how do we change the culture of the game around physical preparation? So the Kyle Walker was a peak moment for that, because that involved so much interaction and debate, discussion, shared knowledge with practitioners from a variety of backgrounds, disciplines, experiences. And we were all, a very, very high performing athlete as well. And we were all able to, discuss, debate, and deliver a really, really great plan there. But another one would have been, we set a session out in preparation for, it was actually after the Germany game, before the Denmark game. And I'd set the session out, and usually there was a lot of like talking, preparing, coaching, et cetera, et cetera. And this session here, I was like, okay, talking to the autonomy piece here. I was like, right, lads, you know what you got to do. It's over to you. So, hit the sessions on the kind of sessions on the board. You know what you got to do. Over to you. Pick what you need to get done. And everyone executed every single rep of every single set that they should have done, plus a little bit extra, in a way that they'd never done it before. Brilliant. And I was like, okay, literally like that. Culture changed. Like we've made a dent on this, and that was no mean feat, and that was a big peak moment actually.
I can only imagine. And then I guess on the flip side of that, what was and I guess there's probably some obvious examples, but what was the most frustrating moment of that experience?
It was a warm-up that I delivered on game day against Poland away in 2023, 2022, something like that, 2022. Yeah, September 2022, after the Euros. And I've got a very, very high appetite for risk and for doing things differently and changing things. And the consequence of that is that at some point or other, you're going to fuck it up.
Tell me
So
about
on
it.
game, I wanted to do this new warm-up or new preparation routine with them for the game, which was going to get them thinking, switch their brains onto it, connected with the types of movement sequences and the synergy that I wanted to see between the players. And I coached it terribly. The players didn't know what was expected. They fucked it up. And because I coached it terribly, and it was a really shit drill to do. And even if I did that 1,000 times, that drill would never work. To the point where I was trying to explain it, and my watch, one goes, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that." And it was like, all right. I don't think anyone does. So like, let's have it. And I think that in sport, I guess that's not sport anyway, but in these particular high pressure profile roles, you can take a lifetime to build up trust, and you can take a moment to lose it. And that, for me, that was the moment where I nearly lost trust in the people around me, because I was trying to do something which I was really interested, but not right for the team. And then it took me another year to kind of build back up enough trust to be able to start taking the team forwards again. So because I tried to do something which I still felt was right for the team, but I did it in the wrong way, or took the wrong approach with it, it actually set the team back a lot longer than it needed to. So that was a most challenging moment for me.
Interesting. And talk to us about performance is a cruel mistress. And that England team's come so close, and it's talk about small margin of errors, a penalty here, arguably still get angry when I think of Bonucci pulling back Saka in Italy, still just get blood boils. But like, how does a team like that, navigate those challenges that just, are inevitable at the top level?
It's interesting about whether I'm always fascinated about whether these kind of big moments are really the moments that win or lose matches, or whether it's accumulation of smaller moments throughout. And I think the same, and I know it's a bit more of a boring answer, I'm afraid, because the big moments are the ones we all get excited about.
Yeah. We're interested in the truth here, though.
But I think the reality is that, the boringness of, what was it? A coach who used to work with say, if variety is the spice of life, repetition's the porridge.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
That kind of like, fundamentally, like being an athlete or being a high performer, I guess, in anything, requires quite a high tolerance to boredom, and being able to repeat the same tasks again and again and again with the same level of meticulousness and execution. And some of that is, within the game and within those moments as well. So for me, the big challenge is can you execute? Can you execute the game plan as it's meant to be done in the moments that they need to be done in across the course of the game? And that's really, really, with an opposition that are trying to stop you doing it. And that is, I think for me, that's across the board in all sports or in all forms of competition. And then having the, I know that you're going to speak to Danny Carey at some point as well, but having I think one of the things that he did exceptionally well was giving the players the autonomy with the education, the knowledge, and the experience to be able to change things as they need to at that particular point in time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm afraid the answer is
that's brilliant advice. I think that's brilliant advice. And like I said earlier, like, we want the truth rather than the sort of snappy highlights here, I guess. And such a key point. And mate, I have to ask, because just from curiosity, I know we've touched on it sort of privately in chats together, but you've worked with such a diverse range of elite performers. But are there any particular that stand out as sort of the consummate professional, maybe in respect to that last principle we're discussing, in terms of, eating that porridge with a smile on their face?
I think that, you and me are working on a project at the moment, and I can think of there's two athletes there that we can both think of there that are performing at a very similar level within different sports, but I mean, couldn't be more different personality wise, and character and how they commit to things wise either. So I think that, without naming names, because I think that's kind of unfair to do, I feel that the most important thing that these top athletes that I work with got is this massive amount of self-awareness. So they're really clear about who they are and how they are, and kind of what they bring and their ability to. And the other thing I've noticed as well is their ability to focus on the thing that's the most important thing to focus on that particular point in time. So they can apply, if it's time to be with their family, they can apply all their resources to their family at that particular point in time. If they're having a night out, you're probably having the best night out with them in the world ever. But when it's training time and they're focusing on their reps, or they're thinking about tactics, then don't bring anything else into the conversation, because that's where their mind is right there, and they're expecting you to have all your focus on that as well at the same particular point in time.
Absolutely.
I think they're really self-aware, and they've got this ability to focus all their resources on all the things, on the things that are most important at that particular point in time.
One of the things I wanted to ask, Ben, is the fact is you've been approached by some of the most, elite sports teams on the planet in terms of roles, and you decided to take a different approach. And I guess that led to the formation of 292. Can you sort of talk us through that possibly mental, possibly genius decision that you've made there?
Well, like I said, is high appetite for risk. I think that I spent some time thinking from a personal perspective around what's really, really important to me. And I've got my wife Coral, I've got 2 kids, Heath and Ada, and what's really, really important to me is that they have a platform, and we have a platform as a family to grow. That whatever their ambitions are, that they've got the opportunity to completely and fully realize them. And I want to make sure that as a father and a husband, that I'm able to give them that platform or support them to be able to go and do that. So that was really, really important to me. And also the ability to do cool shit with cool people and travel the world is also really, really important to me as well. I guess when I looked across my career and the opportunity that I had, and then I guess I saw a market before I got to that point, I then looked across and thought, well, there's more and more athletes that are taking or wanting to, get individualized support, that they want to learn more about their body, they want to learn more about their minds, they want to take more and more ownership of their preparation for their, not just the next game, but their entire career. And I think that there's a gap that I can feel, that can deliver that really, really well. So what I want to do is take all the principles that we've learned from working in high performance sport for, 20 years, with people that have got those similar type of experiences, and providing interdisciplinary support for athletes who've got this ambition of taking much greater ownership of their performance and much greater ownership of their careers, and provide them with the support they deserve. So that's why I set up 292. Really, really heavily invested in the athlete's journey, the athlete's experience, and wanted to make sure they're really, really well supported for that. And for me, it's the same thing I've been doing for a long period of time. But the only difference is that I'm doing it. I'm responsible to my company and the people that work for my company as well now, rather than the national governing body or the team that are employing me. So,
in respect to some of the athletes you're working with, they're quite literally the absolute tip of the spear. Some of the most elite athletes on the planet. What is most important to these individuals?
I think that with all these guys, they've got clarity over their direction, and they've got complete clarity over, I guess, what's important to them. So what's important to them is they know what's really, really important to them and their career. And I think the other piece of it around is that they want to have complete ownership of it as well. I think that for me, that seems to be the thing which these guys have in common. I think within that as well.
Oh, sorry, Ben. I was going to say it must be quite challenging, I guess, because normally the support would come, and you guess that these athletes would still get their support at the club level, but they also move clubs. They also play internationally, and there's so many moving parts that I imagine that sort of spine must be super valuable. So they've got that permanent thread through a career.
You've hit the nail on the head. Like they want to feel they've got a team that's invested in them and completely in. I think that some of my kind of company values are around collaboration, because I think that what I found in sport is that things go wrong when you don't work really closely with each other and when there isn't clear communication. So I know there's clubs and organisations that would rather that my company doesn't exist, or that companies like mine don't exist. But we want to be really clear that we're here to work really, really closely with the clubs and organisations that work with an athlete on a day-to-day basis, or the athletes compete for. Because I think without that, all that happens is we end up replicating work or missing pieces of the puzzle. And that's when, if you're really interested in an athlete improving their performance, getting better, becoming more resilient, then just how important it is to have to connect all of the dots and make sure everyone's got complete clarity on that. I think another point around that as well is that whilst athletes, promote themselves on social media or, throughout the media, they highly respect their privacy, and this work that we do together, or that they do through 292, is very, very personal and private to them. So it's really important as a company that we don't share who we're working with or how we're working with them. But if an athlete, because it's the athlete's journey, it's their story, it's their experience. If they want to shout about us and say that this is we're working with 292 to do this, then be absolutely be our guest. Then it probably means there's some calendar months that go by, or quarters that go by, that I might question that decision. But I think ultimately the athletes have a better experience from it. It allows them to build deeper and deeper trust into the work that we're all doing together. And if they know that we're genuinely invested in their development, we can demonstrate that by saying we're not posting shit on social media about the work that we're doing. And we're collaborating and connecting with all the people that are really important to your performance, regardless of whether that's a difficult thing to do or not. So I think it aligns really closely with the values, and we're having an amazing impact. We've got every athlete. Yeah, like every athlete we're working with has gone from 70% to 100% availability. They're all in the top 25th percentile for speed and power, if not higher, for the leagues and the competitions they compete in. They're all had a performance improvement of 15 to 25% within their specific competitions and leagues, and it's representing a sort of 6 to 8 times return on investment. And for the guys who are listening from the business domain, they'll know that's a good investment to make. So for me, I'd rather talk about that stuff than who. And
absolutely,
I think that's the value and the impact we're having.
No doubt about that, and I've been privileged to sort of see that firsthand. And Ben, like, I'd love to sort of, as we begin to wrap this up, like, you've given us some real insights into your values and who you are as a person, but in the context of your career now, what is most important to you moving forward? The things that are most important to me are, one, the business. Well, firstly, family, platform for growth, and to do the things that they want to do with their lives. Cool shit with cool people, travel the world, massively important. And the way that I think we do that is by the business growing and the impact we're having on the athletes continually growing as well. So for me, it's making sure that the athletes we're having, that we're working with, keep improving on the areas of performance that they're setting for themselves, and that we're setting of them as well, so they keep improving, that they feel like the experience they're having working with 292 is making a genuine positive improvement, not just their performance, but on their lives.
that the company that we're growing, that we're able to affect and improve the experience of more athletes. And we've got some really kind of, for me, scary targets around that. When I discussed them with you, you told me I wasn't being ambitious enough. So there's maybe a mindset or perception shift I need to make there as well. But I think that, that improving the athlete experience, the company growing and being able to affect more athletes is going to give me the opportunity to support my family in the way that I want to, and to do cool shit with cool people and travel the world.
100%, mate. And look, the fact is, you had this goal to enter into this space, and you've I mean, I guess to an extent you're only getting started, but the reality is you have done it at the absolute highest level. And so you're well positioned to answer this question. Now, there'll be some people that are perhaps listening to this podcast who know they've got more in the tank, but maybe they're going through a bit of a rut, or they're not quite sure where to start. They may be lacking some of the enthusiasm required to get going. What would your advice be, but based on where you're coming from, to that individual?
Thinking that just do something like that.
Yeah.
Number one is just to do something. I believe what I've seen work really, really well, and the advice or guidance always give to athletes, and even these really, really big moments in, when you're on the sideline or, wherever, is just win your next action. Whatever you're doing next, just fucking win it. If I'm putting the lid back on my pen, make sure it's really, really well, and the line there aligns with Bic. I've won my next action. Because I think there's something about just continually winning the next thing, and just focusing on winning the next thing, which accumulates, and it allows you to give you some of the headspace to look up and go, okay, what are the more significant and fundamental things that need to change? So for me, do something and win the next action. And that's something that I always, for me, because we all go through rough parts, right? And we all go through really tough and challenging bits. I was speaking to an athlete the other day. For some reason, I actually feel much more comfortable in those environments when things are going really badly. For some reason, that seems to, I seem to kind of enjoy those moments more than the kind of calm moments. And it's because you've got the opportunity to go and win something, right? So you can go win the next action, win the next thing in front of you. And I think when you take that mindset of winning, you also have to take a step in order to win whatever's next. You have to pause and think about what the correct course of action is, rather than just attack.
Okay, so we're going to finish up with some quick fire questions. Ben, favorite movie?
Rocky.
Favorite TV series?
I still don't know what this is. And for the listeners here, this is the second time we've done it, and I've drawn a
17th.
Yes, sorry, drawn a plot. So I'm going to go with. I've just watched. I don't know, Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad's fantastic, isn't it?
That'll do. Favorite book?
Watch it forever.
Long Walk to Freedom.
Yeah, Long Walk to Freedom. Nelson Mandela.
Beautiful. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
No, you know what? Favorite TV series? Great. World War II in color.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is powerful, isn't it?
Unreal. So, yeah.
It's very different emotionally, isn't it? Watching it black and white versus color.
Yeah, it's like you're there. It's ridiculous.
It's shocking, isn't it?
So yeah, it really
is.
It's
mandated, actually, especially in going on the world today.
Oh man, so that completely took me away. So I would watch that over Breaking Bad.
Yeah, good shout. Good shout. Favorite personal quote or mantra?
I had the poster above my bed when I was a teenager.
Well, we don't want to hear all about your posters.
And it had written "Catch a Dream and Run with It," and that's nice. Always.
Greatest athlete of all time?
Muhammad Ali.
Greatest leader of all time?
I think that's Nelson Mandela.
Greatest team of all time?
although we've done this twice, I really should have thought about what my answers would be, but I'm going to go with, if England can go and win Euros 2024, then I think that's some story that's taken them up to that point.
Oh, it'd be beautiful, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
for the taking.
Well, I'm sure there's better teams than that out there, though, and that requires more reflection. This is a 2-pinter.
Okay, we'll make that happen. If you could have coffee or a pint with any historical figure, who would you choose?
I'm going to pick two. I'm going to pick my two grandfathers because they had such rich and incredible lives and diverse lives, and I would ask them all the questions that and rehear or ask them all the questions I never got the chance to ask them, and re-listen and record all the stories that they used to tell.
Brilliant. Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. It's been wicked. And I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon.
Likewise, mate. And we'll have 2 pints whilst watching Breaking Bad. And look, thank you so much for having me on. I hope that those who have listened can find something which connects or resonates with them. And a massive thank you again for bringing these amazing people to my car when I'm driving. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And mate, it means a lot coming from you. Look, mate, keep up the good work, get stuck in, and we'll speak soon.
See you later, boss.
Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us today. I love this topic of human performance and excellence, and I've been engaged in it neurotically for the last 20 years. It's a sincere privilege to have the opportunity to share my knowledge, network, and learnings with you. Now, go and put the principles to work. Make sure you let us know what resonates. Reach out with questions, blind spots. We've got you covered. Remember, excellence is just a series of days repeated over and over again. Now go and win your day. In 2021, I published my first book, Accelerating Excellence. If you're finding the conversations and information on this podcast useful, you might want a physical reference point and to gain even deeper awareness of the concepts discussed. The book's actually more of an operation manual containing more detail with a step-by-step guide on how to implement all this stuff so you can get maximum benefit, which was one of my main motivations in writing it. Yes, I want the podcast and the book to be inspiring and entertaining, but it was non-negotiable for me to make sure that the listener or reader is provided with a structure and direction in terms of actually putting this stuff to work. The book's called Accelerating Excellence. It's a #1 international bestseller. And if you're moving from more than just interest towards implementation, I think you'll really enjoy it. Like everything I do, the book is evidence-based, but practice-led, drawing on my experience working with some of the world's most elite, exclusive, high-performing teams and individuals. It's filled with highly actionable strategies you can apply today to become better tomorrow. If this sounds like something from you, see the link in description where you can download 6 chapters of the book for free in either audio or digital format. It's also available to purchase on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and at your local bookstore. I hope you enjoy. By now, we all know the importance of a winning mindset. We're bombarded with elite performers telling us that mindset's what separates the best from the rest. That if we want to be successful, we need to be more confident, resilient, and motivated. And of course, when panic strikes, we need to calm down, relax, or chill out. Great, we get it. But the question is how? We're given this guidance with almost zero practical advice in terms of how to achieve it. Where can we actually go to develop that world-class mindset? What's the back squat for resilience, the bench press for confidence, and the bicep curl for positive thinking? Well, that's why I created the Mindset app. Through the app, you'll gain access to the psychological skills training used by world champion athletes, special forces operators, and some of the world's most successful traders and investors. The reality is these guys pay me a fortune to help them get this right. But the thing is, these skills are equally, if not more important for the aspiring athlete, executive, or operator. And that's exactly why I created this app. I want these tools and training available to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Mindset is a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed with the right strategy and effort. The tools and techniques are designed in a way that will literally rewire your brain, like learning to ride a bike or drive a car, all the techniques are designed with creating a high-performing, self-regulating you 2.0. Every strategy in the Mindset app is backed by empirical research. There's 10-minute emotional control training exercises that have been shown to increase your ability to overcome detrimental decision-making biases by up to 80%. In another study, just 3 weeks of executing visualization training led to 34% improvements in performance. Another research group found 50% greater improvements in the rate of learning. And just a few weeks of performing visualization led to 22% reductions in anxiety and 21% increases in confidence. These numbers are phenomenal, and I've never met an elite performer in any domain that can afford to be missing out on this type of edge. What I love most is that we've structured everything so that you don't need to carve out an extra hour in your day to get this done. Small bite-sized chunks of 5 to 10 minutes are all it takes. In fact, I'd only encourage you to use the tool on your commute, in the sauna, at the end of your working day, or bolt it onto the end of your gym session. Any dead time you have can now immediately be transformed to deliver you extreme performance gains. My goal is to remove every possible obstacle to your development. And with that in mind, the basic package is completely free. Visit the link in description and sign up for our pre-launch free emotional control, visualization, and performance routine programs. I really hope you enjoy.